It might not look like it, but I'm incredibly happy. No, not like that. It's because my favorite kind of keyboards just got competition. Howdy hey, I'm Hipyo Tech and I try keyboards so you don't have to. And in my quest to find the best keyboards ever, let's just say I've tried quite a few. But no matter what, I keep going back to one type of keyboard, and that's low profile. They're small, they're thocky, they have so much potential, and nobody's really making them. So when Epomaker sent me a message and said, hey, we've got this new one, you know we had to try it. Hey, wait, what's that? It's like half the price of the low free flow? Which was my previous favorite low profile keyboard. Let's see what corners they might have cut. And wait, what are you doing with that tape? What are you doing with that tape, Hipyo? Anyways, this video is sponsored by Epomaker, who did not review this video, did not tell me what to say, and all of my thoughts are my own. And this is the Luma 84. You might notice the box is pretty small. However, that does not mean that it's not packing heat. Also, it'd be really convenient if it was $84, but it's actually $88 on Amazon and $99 on Epomaker's website. Now in this video, I'm hoping to determine, is the Luma 84 worth your money? Is it better than any of the other low profile keyboards? And does it sound like heaven? And if it doesn't sound like heaven, can we do anything to fix that? Now, after eating the snack of silica gel, let's take a look at the accessories. Keycap puller, keycaps, 2 switches, and a USB dongle. We'll take a closer look at these later, but overall, the unboxing experience is pretty bare bones and lame. However, what isn't bare bones and lame is the keyboard, because it comes fully pre-assembled. Oh, except for those 2 keycaps. We're just gonna pretend that never happened, because why do you have to go and ruin it? I had that whole setup. Anyways, this is Epomaker's first real offering into low profile keyboards, so there might be a couple things that they get wrong here. Now, some people might want low profile keyboards for their typing angle, some people might want them because they look sleek like an Apple keyboard, or maybe even the unique sound that they make. But this one in particular is made out of full aluminum, with a little asterisk because the aluminum isn't very full, it's quite thin, and we'll take a closer look at that later. However, that also makes this keyboard incredibly light for being full metal, which could make it a great keyboard if you travel often or go in and out of the office all the time. However, what you don't get is any flippy feet or any way of changing the angle whatsoever. If you're getting a low profile keyboard, you're probably wanting it for the low profile, or wait, is that a gasket mount? If you're new to keyboards, gasket mounts are supposed to make your keyboard softer to type on and dampen some of the vibrations. However, in this case, there is a gasket mount, but you do not feel it when you're practically typing on it. You really have to press hard. So at my first glance, it looks like it's checking a lot of boxes, but is it checking them very well? That's where we need to dig a little bit deeper. Now, aesthetically, you have 2 different color options for this thing. You have a black and a blue, or a white and a purple like I have here. Personally, I think the white and the purple is really clean, but also the black and the blue is really clean. So they did a good job on those. And because this is a low profile keyboard, obviously the keycaps are low profile, leading to about an inch-ish of height off of your desk. However, I think this keyboard is incredibly sleek and beautiful for not being that much keyboard. And that's not even getting into what's actually in this keyboard, because some of that really did surprise me. Now, here's where it starts to set itself a little bit apart from the competition. Obviously, it's wireless with a little bit of RGB action. However, your RGB isn't that bright, but you do get a little nice RGB indicator at the top right of the board. One thing that this board does do that some of its other competitors don't is it's 2.4 gigahertz wireless, meaning you can plug it in with a little dongle rather than just needing Bluetooth. However, it also supports Bluetooth with 3 different pairings, so if you need to pair it to a computer and a phone and all of that, you totally could. Those little productivity options are incredibly important in a board like this because you're probably going to be using it for work, not necessarily gaming. Although if you did use it for gaming, it only has 4 milliseconds of latency over wired and 1,000 pulling. Also on the topic of software, this thing doesn't run some clunky, crazy malware software. It runs VIA, which is one of the best customizable softwares for custom keyboard enthusiasts. Technically, there's better, but you have to put in a lot of effort for those, so we're not going to talk about those. Now digging into the board, the keycaps are double shot PBT. I think this is where they've started to cut corners, as these do feel relatively cheap, especially when comparing them to the incredibly thick keycaps of the low free flow. However, with the low free flow costing anywhere from $160 to $170 US, this is quite a lot cheaper, so I am expecting corners to be cut here. The second corner that I feel like was cut here is these stabilizers. They're relatively cheap, and mine did rattle a bit, meaning that I had to lube them with a little bit of dielectric grease. This is a pretty small issue, but it is kind of annoying that mine were rattling, considering Epomaker has that down on most of their other keyboards. And wait, is this hot swappable? Okay, yeah, it is. The other place where I feel like they've cut corners here is these switches. These are just basic low profile switches from Gateron, and because it's a different architecture, it importantly does not fit any switches from Kale, who makes arguably the best low profile switches. The board comes with a red switch option or a brown switch option. The brown switch option is kind of tactile, but not really, and the red is a linear. However, because of that, I feel like you are making quite the genuine sacrifice with this. And this is actually the biggest con to the whole entire board, because it puts it on the same level as the Keychron low profile keyboards, except those have way better layout support if you are European and need ISO, or just a little bit spicy, and the Newfie low-profile keyboards, which are about $20 more expensive, but also use Gateron switches that are a little bit more customized and a little bit smoother. This leads to the board feeling really smooth to type on, and obviously pretty nice. However, it just doesn't quite sound anywhere near as good as some of the competition, especially the Iqnix low-profile boards or the low-free boards. But we'll take a look at that in the final sound test. And before I do that final sound test, I want to do something a little bit fun to this keyboard. And don't worry, I've already recorded the final sound test before I opened it. Now, the first thing I noticed was that they glued the wires for some bizarre reason. I'm not sure why they glued the wires down, but that makes it way less moddable. Maybe this was just my version. Now, I was able to scrape off the glue and get this thing unplugged, but that does make it not very modding friendly. Granted, most low-profile keyboards aren't modding friendly. If you're new to keyboards, you're probably like, Hipyo, why are you taking apart this keyboard? What's even your deal, dude? And as you get more into keyboards, you realize that by removing foam or by adding tape or removing tape, you can customize the sound and the feel of your keyboard quite a lot without having to buy a new one. It's a tool that you're going to use every day, so it might as well be as good as possible, right? And one thing that isn't as good as possible is how thin and pingy the aluminum case is for this board. Like, yowza. But I do have an idea to make it a little bit less pingy. Now, they do include a nice sheet of foam on this board, but I personally feel like it's not doing as much as it could. So I have a big brain idea. You might have seen on my channel, I put tape on a lot of different keyboards, so why not put tape on a low-profile keyboard? I've actually never done this before, so it's a bit of a fun experiment, how it's going to affect the sound. Now, generally, when you put electrical tape on the back of your keyboard, it makes it poppier, it makes it a little bit thockier, so I'm hoping that that will bring back some of the deep resonant sound that I'm obsessed with. Speaking of deep resonant sound, have you checked out my music yet? It's Kadeli. I have it linked down below. I make music. It's good. Now, one thing I'm doing that's kind of incredibly unhinged is I'm putting a layer of electrical tape along the whole entire border of this case. I'm hoping this is kind of going to create like an interesting barrier between the two bits of case, kind of like a force break mod, but a little bit jankier. Now, I know this will absolutely kill the gasket mount and potentially make it a little bit more janky to type on because it could make it wobble if it doesn't close properly. But hey, you know what? I like modding keyboards and I haven't gotten to mod keyboards in a while because every keyboard is way too good and there's no point in modding it. So a keyboard that's slightly bad but also cheaper that I can mod is kind of fun. By the way, this desk mat is linked down below. But you're probably thinking, Hipyo, should I even buy the keyboard then? Like, is it even worth my money? And that's where it gets a little bit more interesting because this thing does punch well within its weight for the price of around $88. However, if you're looking for an alternate layout like ISO, then you have to go with Keychron. And you are settling with a cheaper style case, cheaper keycaps, and cheaper switches with this board. However, it does do a lot well with good software and good wireless connectivity, which puts it in a weird Goldilocks zone where it's like, if you have maybe a bit more money to spend, possibly save up and get an Iqnix or a low-free. However, if you're on a budget, then this thing is really respectable and decent. But what do you think of low-profile keyboards? Is this the next big keyboard trend, or am I just a little bit of a simp for them? Leave a comment down below.